Hi, everybody, and a very pleasant good evening to you wherever you may be. Lucky Strike's blowing smoke rings at you from the studios of Comfortably Zoned Radio. And it's time for Dodgers baseball, a tale of two cities from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. I'm your host, Peter Trunk, and my co-host is Ron Rabinovitz. Ron, how you doing?
Hi, Peter. Good. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing very well. I'm very excited for tonight's show. And it's just the start of things. So pull up a comfortable chair, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to, you can take off your shoes, go ahead and wiggle your toes. And we hope you'll have a cold shaver or two throughout the broadcast. Our guest tonight hit the last home run as a Brooklyn Dodger. The last Brooklyn Dodger home run that was hit by my guest tonight, our guest tonight, and it's handsome Ransom Jackson. How are you, Ransom?
I'm great. Glad to be with you guys.
I'm glad
Randy,
you
glad to have you with us.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Ransom Jackson has a book out. I want to mention that right off. It's called Handsome Ransom Jackson, Accidental Big Leaguer. And I think Ransom can explain why it's called Accidental Big Leaguer much better than I can. So, Ransom, I'm going to let you explain to the folks how come you named your book Accidental Big Leaguer.
Well, I grew up during the Depression, and, of course, baseball, we didn't, in Little Rock, Arkansas, we didn't know much about pro baseball. They had a team there, Little Rock Travelers, and to get in, it cost you a quarter, but we didn't have a quarter back in those days. So, and then they did have them on radio, and we would listen to the games on radio, but, you know, we didn't know the guys, and the names were not familiar to us. It was just something to do. And my father was a good friend of Bill Dickey, the great Yankee catcher, who was from Little Rock, and he came by the house one night after an exhibition game and gave me a baseball signed by the 1939 Yankees, and the next day I was out playing catch with it. You know, I don't know what it'd be worth today. So, you know, I didn't pay any attention to pro baseball, and then I went away to college. I went to the Navy officer training program, and they sent me to TCU in Texas, and I played baseball there, and just played, didn't pay attention to professional baseball. So all of a sudden I'm out of college, and a scout comes up to me and says, "Do you want to play professional baseball and get paid?" I said, "Well, why not?" I didn't have anything else to do, so that's really how the name came. Because he didn't have anything else to do, so I just decided I'd play baseball. It was big money, you know. It was like $6,000. What the heck?
Yeah, right. That was big money in those days.
Yeah.
It sure was.
So that's how I'm not necessarily reluctant, but that's a good word. I was reluctant to play because I never had, as I said, heard of any of the ball players. I never played any baseball in high school. Didn't have any, but I did get to play it in college. So
that's great.
It was just reluctant to do anything really until it
Ransom, when you played baseball in college, did you in fact play third base?
Oh yes, I did. I don't know why. I just walked over one day and started playing third base and played it 3 years in college. And
wow.
So that's in fact I've never played. I played one day. I think 2 days at first base when our first baseman got hurt in my first year in pro ball in Des Moines, Iowa, and then I played one game in left field in Cincinnati one day when our left fielder by the name of Hank Sauer collapsed between games of a double hitter, and the coach told me to go out there and play left field in the second game, and I said, "I've never even walked out in left field." Well, you're there. So, otherwise, I've always been a third baseman.
All right.
That's great.
Now, when you played football in college, I understand that you played in 2 consecutive Cotton Bowls for 2 different teams. Can you explain that for us?
Yeah, well, that's never been done in history. I was in, as I said, I was in the Navy officers training program, and they sent me to TCU, and I was just the way it worked. There was about 600 cadets there. Well, we were midshipman school actually. They were paying us $50 a month, and if you flunk one course, you went out to where they were fighting. So there was some kind of incentive to pass.
Yeah, I would say.
So I would just went out one day to watch them. We got up 5:30 in the morning, and we had 21 hours. So we were full up to our neck in studying. And I just watched the football team practice. They didn't have many guys. And the coach walks over. The coach is named Dutch Meyer, who's in the Hall of Fame. And he says, little short guy, about 5'8", with a big, deep voice. He says, "Son, you want to come out and try out?" I said, "Coach, I just played sandlot football, just for fun on Sundays, and I don't know." He says, "Come on out. We need people." And so he said, "What do you play?" I said, "I don't know, Coach. I just messed around." He said, I was 6'1" and weighed 160 pounds. He said, "We'll put you as a lineman, 160-pound lineman." So I walked over there and next day and put a uniform on and walked over the linemen, and they were practicing, working out button heads and so forth. I looked over at the backfield guys, and they were just throwing the ball around and kicking. I walked up to Coach Meyer afterwards. I said, "Coach, I am not a lineman. I'm a backfield guy." He said, "That's all right." So anyway, he put me in the backfield, and we ended up winning Southwest Conference with about 18 guys playing. I played a little over 40 minutes a game, and
wow,
every game, and I'd never played football before. So we played at a Cotton Bowl game on New Year's Day. We played Oklahoma A&M. They had 3 All-Americans, and we had 18 guys, and they just barely nosed us out, 44-0. And then the next year, after a year and a half, they closed it and sent us down to the University of Texas. And the coach down there was a guy named Dana X Bible, who again became in the Hall of Fame, little short guy. And he called me in. He says, "Jackson, I saw you play against us last year. I want you to come out." And I said, "Coach, I have all this studying, and I got to get up at 5:30 in the morning." He said, "We really need you. We got a new quarterback coming in by the name of Bobby Lane, and we'd like more of you.
Oh, my God.
We need you." And I said, "Well, I don't have anything else to do." So I went out and, of course, played with Bobby Lane all year. Great player. And so in the year, we won the Southwest Conference and went to Cotton Bowl again, and we beat Missouri in the Cotton Bowl. I think it was like 43 to 28 or something like that. And I got to throw one pass, a 56-yard pass on the famous Statue of Liberty. Bobby Lane handed it off to me, and I just ran around through it as far as I could. The guy caught it.
That's great.
Was it for a touchdown, Ransom?
No, he was tackled on the 10-yard line. We scored. But that's
fabulous.
And the paper the next day said Bobby Lane was great. Texas completed like 26 out of 28 passes, and Bobby Lane completed 25 of them. And I was the 26th, but I wasn't mentioned.
Did you wear a leather helmet?
I did at TCU. I got a picture of me in a leather helmet. I didn't know the difference. We didn't have hard helmets back then.
Right, I know.
I mean, that's when men were men. You got to understand that.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Did you ever play defense, too? Because a lot of the players played offense and defense.
Oh, I did. I played both of them. And that's what you did back then. At TCU, when you play almost 40 minutes a game, you got to. I was one of the few who had somebody who'd come in and take my place for a little while and give me a rest. So, it was interesting. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was having fun.
That's fabulous.
And then I went out for baseball. I went out for baseball,
go ahead.
too. I don't know why I went out for baseball, but I once at TCU and twice at Texas and won the Southwest Conference and hit him all 3 years. So
wow, that's fabulous.
Again, I didn't know what I was doing. I just having fun.
That's a hell of a lot.
When you were in college, when you played baseball in college, Ransom, did you hit for power?
Well, no, I'd say I hit my share of home runs, but I mean, I don't remember. I guess I would look through my records and see, about how many hits I had and how many home runs. But I guess I hit 12, 15 home runs a season, which back then was pretty good back in those days.
That's darn good. You bet. You bet.
So now you come to the Cubs in Chicago. Tell us about Wrigley Field and the fans and the neighborhood and Ernie Banks, and who was your manager?
Well, I played that 1 year in 47, summer of 47, I guess I played semi-pro. They had this guy got up a team just north of Houston. He had I think he had 9 college players from all different schools, and all 9 of us were all conference. So we had a pretty good team, and we ended up winning the state. No, in fact, we didn't lose a game all year long. That's how good it was.
Wow.
And so a scout walked up to me, first scout I ever met in my life, and he said, Jackson, you want to play pro baseball? And I said, I have no idea. I never even thought about that. I'm fixed to graduate with a business degree. But come to think of it, in getting that degree, I haven't paid much attention to what I was studying. So I don't know what I'd do in business. So he said, well, come on up to Chicago. We'll fly you up there. And my dad and I flew up there, and we tried out. And they had a pitcher named Russ Meyer.
I remember that name.
And he stayed home. They were on the road, and he stayed home to work on his arm. So he pitched to me. And I hit 3 or 4 balls up at the seats, and then they took some ground balls. They called me in there. And they said, Jackson, we like what we see. We're going to offer you a major league contract, and you can be on the major league roster. I said, what does that mean? He said, it means that we got 40 guys on the roster, and they all go to spring training with the major leagues team, and you get to. Everybody has to have a major league salary. Be making a major league salary. There's a minimum. I said, okay. Mm-hmm. He says, and we're going to give you a 2-year contract. That means you'll be on there for 2 years at $6,000 a year. And I said, wow. Good gosh, that much money? I said, where do I sign? And so I signed.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I was coming from $50 a month in the Navy to $6,000. Good gosh. So anyway, that's how it started out, and I got to play. 12 years of pro ball and 10 years of majors, and I got to play in a couple of All-Star games, the World Series, and all that kind of stuff, and did a few things that nobody else has ever done, and I got to play with some great people, and I was there when Ernie Banks came up, and in '53, I guess. I came up actually in 50, and Banks came up in 53, and I could tell right away how great he was. And so he was playing shortstop. I was playing third base. So I walked over to him after he'd been there a couple of weeks. I said, Ernie, I've been here a while. I know the ropes. I said, here's the way it's going to be. I said, I'm going to play right on the third base line, and you're going to take everything else that comes along. I mean, you're going to take everything else. I'll take the ones right down the line, the balls, and you get everything else. And he just about could. He knew I was teasing, but he just about could. So we played side by side for a couple of years, and he was Hall of Famer all the way. I got to see him up in Chicago. I went up to Chicago and threw out the first pitch one day, and Ernie was there. We talked for quite a while, and so it was good to see him. But I hate to lose him, but he was a great ball player.
Yeah, he was a great ball player. He was. So
who did you room with when you were a Cub?
Do who?
Who did you room with when you were a Cub?
Well, I had a guy named, I had 2 or 3. Let's see, I roomed with Hal Jeffcoat, and I roomed with, I can't remember back then. I remember my roommates were the Dodgers.
Yeah.
But,
who were they with the Dodgers?
Well, it was the Dodgers. My first roommate with the Dodgers. Well, the first roommate with the Cubs, just being a rookie, they threw me in with a little short second baseman who smoked Italian cigars. His name was Bob Ramazzotti, and he did a crooked cigars, and they smell. And I come back to the room, and you couldn't even see the other side of the room. So smoking, it smelled bad, and I couldn't sleep. So I walked up to General Manager the first week. I said, I would certainly appreciate it if you gave me somebody else as a roommate. They said, sure. So, but anyway, I had my first roommate with the Dodgers, I believe, was a guy named Dick Williams. You ever heard of him?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, he was. He's in the Hall of Fame too as a manager.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And then they put me with Roger Craig, and we just hit it off because he's a good Southern boy.
He's a good guy.
Yeah, he is. We had a great time. And then after the World Series, we went over to Japan for a month, and they put me with a guy named, I don't know if you've heard of him, his name's Don Drysdale.
Never heard of him.
Never heard of him.
You heard of him? He was my roommate, and then he flew back to I live in Athens, Georgia. He flew back to Athens with me, and he came back twice to visit me. Once to bring his daughter to go to the University of Georgia here. And he flew in. He called me in the middle of December. He said, I'm bringing my daughter up to go to school. I'd like for you to find a place for her to live. So my wife and I found her a place, a nice apartment, and they drove in a little after Christmas. And we'd gotten a furnished apartment, and Don hung around few days to get little incidentals, and up comes New Year's Eve, and he was down at the Holiday Inn, I believe, and still hadn't left town. And I said, Don, what are you going to do on New Year's Eve? He said, I'm just going to, watch a few things, listen to. I said, no, you're not. You're coming out to Country Club with me. They're having a big party. And he says, okay. So I walked in Athens Country Club, my wife and I, with Don Drysdale, and I did not know I had that many friends. They just came over, and Ransom, how are you? And Terry, and you are. I said, this is Don Drysdale. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, we had a great time, and Don stayed he stayed, he left New Year's Day, but we had a great time New Year's Eve.
Oh, that's great.
So I've had some good roommates
you
over
sure
the years,
have.
and I've played with some fantastic guys. When I got traded, I've been with the Cubs for, I guess at that time, 5.5 years. I just finished a couple of All-Star games, and I thought I was hit on a stick there in Chicago, and a sportscaster, a writer friend of mine for the newspapers called me one evening in the middle of December. He said, "You just been traded." I said, "You're full of it." As I said, I'm it here in Chicago. And he said, "No, you've been traded." And I said, "Who?" And he said, "Guess." And I said, "Don't do that to me." He said, "No, guess." And so I started low. I said, "Cincinnati." No. Pittsburgh. No. He said, "You've been traded to the Dodgers." I says, "Uh-oh." Now I got a chance to get in the World Series. I never would have had a chance for the Cubs.
Right.
So he said, "Yeah, they traded 3 guys for you."
Wow.
And so I said, fantastic. So that's when I went over to the Dodgers. Of course, Jackie was retiring the following year.
Yes, right.
And that was when they got me to replace him.
Yeah,
And so, of course, all the sports writers and all the newspaper people will come up to me and say, how you and Jackie get along? And I said, well, we're getting along fine. I knew this was coming. And I said, said Jackie, and I did. Of course, I'd played against him for 5 years, so I knew him. And so this was nothing, just part of the game. But what a great ball player he was. He was probably the best all-around ball player I've ever seen. But, I mean, I just sit there and I'd think, man, here I am playing with the Brooklyn Dodgers. There's Pee Wee. There's Gil Hodges. There's
Gil Hodges.
There's Campanella over there. Gorilla. And there's Newcomb and Erskine. And
boy.
Man, here I am.
What a team.
Yeah, what a team, and they started Jackie out. The day before the season started, the manager, Walter Austin, came to me and said, I've been playing y'all off and on all spring training, but I'm going to start Jackie. I said, I don't blame you, Coach. I said, you should. He's been here all these years. I wouldn't expect it. So he did. And Jackie played the first 3.5 weeks and just could not do anything right. And so Austin says, Jackson, you're in there. And so I said, fine. So I went in there and started playing, and he put me at cleanup. And I was batting cleanup for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and I was just hog heaven. And
I'll bet you.
I was hitting really good. I was driving in runs and just playing fantastic. And we had the off 3 days for the All-Star game, and I turned off a faucet in the house I was renting, one of these porcelain faucets that broke off in my hand and cut my thumb down to the bowl. And so I was out, and Jackie came back in, and he played the rest of the year. But I played off and on. And so, But I was, it was just fantastic. And that one game where we were behind 5-2 in the bottom of the ninth against Philadelphia, and let's see, Pee Wee walked, Gilliam walked, Pee Wee forced him, and then Steiner hit a home run, and Jackson hit a home run, and then Hodges hit a home run, and the game was over. And that's the first and only time in Major League history that 3 straight home runs in the bottom of the ninth won the game. I mean, there's been 3 in the bottom of the ninth, but they didn't win the game. But this was boom, 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 and game over. So we researched that. I would have thought that would have happened before, but we researched it all over the place and found out that's the only time it's ever happened.
Wow.
Ransom, how could you describe for our audience? How can you describe the difference between traveling around the National League with the Chicago Cubs as opposed to traveling around the National League with the Brooklyn Dodgers?
Well, with the Cubs, of course, we were always riding a train, or short distances we would take buses, but it was mostly on the train. The Dodgers had their own plane, which you get there faster at a plane than you do on the train.
Yeah, for sure.
And one year with the Cubs in Cincinnati, I don't know whether you ever been to Cincinnati, but Cincinnati is a hot place to play. In summertime temperature runs in the high 90s and the low 100s.
Very humid.
It's
very
a hot
humid
place.
too.
And they had us downtown in a very nice hotel. One problem is it didn't have air conditioning.
Oh, jeez.
And so we played all summer, and every time we go to Cincinnati, we wouldn't have air conditioning. And what we'd do after a hot game in the afternoon, we'd go to the tub and turn on the cold water, which wasn't very cold, and put our sheets under there and roll and wring them out, and then run in there and throw them on the bed and try to get a little sleep.
Oh, my God. Oh my God, unbelievable!
And that's major league for you.
Yeah, right.
That was major.
That's really first class.
Yeah,
right.
That's so funny. That's so funny. I was very good friends with Jackie. You know that, Randy.
Yeah.
Jackie and I were good friends. Yeah, and I met him when I was a little boy in 1953, and we became the best of friends. And he was at my 10th birthday party in Milwaukee, and I grew up in Wisconsin, and I was in touch with him all the way up until the time he passed away in 1972. So when you talk about Jackie, I enjoy hearing those stories too. I know he went to Japan with you also.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Yeah,
What a great
he wrote
trip
me a
it
letter.
was.
Oh, he said it was great. He wrote me a letter.
My roommate was Drysdale, and
right.
we'd get on those Japanese Pullmans, and they weren't quite fit for a 6'6" guy like Drysdale.
Yeah, right.
And he'd be curled up in the corner. I just laughed at him. But
the people over there were so excited
country,
to have you there, weren't they? Yeah.
And the people. And did I tell you about Hiroshima?
No.
You know, we went over there about 10 years. It was about 10 years after. We went over in 46. And it was about 10 years before that the bomb was bombed in Nagasaki and Hiroshima, and so we flew. Japan's 4 islands, and we'd fly all over the 4 islands to the cities. And we'd play in different cities, and then we'd go to another city, and they would have a ticker tape trip right down the middle of the town for us, and then they'd fill the ballpark with 40,000. It was just great. But anyway, they told us when you're coming to Hiroshima, there's still a lot of people who are mad, and so they just don't go out at night unless you're 2 or 3 or 4 guys. And so we said okay, and so we got there about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we didn't play till the next afternoon. So Drysdale and me decided we'd just, hang in the lobby. And so there was a young guy, kind of a bellboy there, and a young girl behind the desk. And so, inquisitive me walked over to, both of them are kind of together. So I walked over, I said, "Can I ask you all a question?" They spoke perfect English. They said, "Sure." And I said, "Can you tell me where you were when the bomb blew up?" And they said, "Well, the Americans dropped pamphlets a week or so before the bomb and said that something terrible was going to happen to leave town. And so we left town with a bunch of other people and went way up in the mountains, and we survived." And I said, "I've never heard that before in my life." And so I made a lot of speeches over the years, and every time I do, I tell that story because I think it should be in the record books or the history books, but it's not. And I've talked to a lot of history teachers, and they said, "I've never heard that." But then I've talked.
I never heard it either.
Then they said I've talked to some history teachers, and they said, "Yeah, I tell that story myself." And I have a copy of one of those pamphlets that was a guy mailed to me who had heard my talk. And I just finished making a talk down in Savannah, Georgia. And it was about 150 people there. And there were a bunch of old-timers, veterans. And one of them afterwards walked up to me, and he was about 5'5", and he had tears in his eyes. And he said, "Thank you for telling that story." And I said, "You're welcome." And he said, "I was one of the gunners on the plane that dropped the pamphlets." And he says, I would never forget it. And I said, "Well, I will never forget it either." So I always tell the story because I think it's pertinent to American history.
It is, very much so. You're right. Wow.
We're listening to Ransom Jackson, third baseman for the Brooklyn Dodgers. If you joined us late, his book, Accidental Big Leaguer, Ransom Jackson, Accidental Big Leaguer, and he hit the last Brooklyn Dodger home run. He's regaling us with his football and baseball stories. He was the first player, the last Brooklyn Dodger to hit a home run, but he was the first player to officially get an intentional walk. Can you explain that one for us, Ransom?
Well, yeah, kind of, you know, one day some of the brains were sitting up on the 5th floor or 18th floor or somewhere looking at the record book, and they said, you know, we don't have any record of it, the first official walk. You know, we've got the hits and the steals and strikeouts, but we can't find any records of the official records of a intentional walk. And he said, well, you know, so we've got to start it then. So they said, okay, we'll do the first game in 1953. We'll start with the first game in 1953, and whoever gets the first intentional walk gets to go in the record book. So we were playing St. Louis, in St. Louis, and the pitcher was, I believe it was Ned Garber.
Uh-huh.
And in the first inning, he walked me to load the bases. And so that was the first inning. So, and then, so we researched that, and that was right. So I knew that I was the first intentional walk in the National.
How do you like that? Wow.
And so we thought, well, let's research the American League. So we researched the American League, and we found out there was a guy that walked with the White Sox in the first inning, was intentionally walked in the first inning, but there was an hour's difference because they were in another time zone. So, you know, so I got to be the first intentional walk in Major League history, both American.
How do you like that?
Now, I can take
That's
that.
really something.
I can take that down to the candy store, but I won't get anything for it.
You got 5 hits in a game one time. Do you remember the game you got 5 hits in a game?
Yeah, in Cincinnati. I think there was a couple of times I got 5 hits, but that one I remember most was in Cincinnati.
Well, you got 4 hits in a game 10 times.
Oh, I did? Damn,
10
I was good.
times. I looked it up today.
I thought I was. Now I'm gonna be able to. I'll sleep good tonight now.
Now, while I'm on a roll, I'll tell you that you hit 2 home runs in a game 6 times.
Oh, really?
That's not too shabby, Ransom.
Well, I know I've got on my wall in my den. I've got 2 grand slams, and one of them is Joe Garagiola. When I'm coming across home plate, Joe Garagiola is shaking my hands because he was playing with the Cubs then, and the other one, I'm coming across home plate, and Joe Garagiola is standing there with his catching outfit on. He was playing for Pittsburgh. So, so I don't know how many grand slams. Let's see. I do know. Let's see what else did it. I did not know that. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay. Let me say it. Well, let me say it one more time. I looked it up today.
Wait a minute. Let me write that down.
Come on. 4 hits in a game 10 times. 2 home runs in a game 6 times.
Wait a minute. You're too fast for me.
I'm sorry.
Now I'm ready. Okay.
4 hits in a game 10 times.
10 times. Okay.
2 home runs in a game 6 times.
How many times?
6.
6 times.
6 times for 2 home runs.
That's okay. Now I know.
All right, there you go.
You
don't know. You don't have how many times I've hit home runs in the bottom of the ninth to win a game, do you?
I don't. I did not look that up.
Looking that up for me. Give me a call.
I sure will.
I can think of it. Let's see. I know I think the first game I ever played in the major leagues, I hit a home run in the bottom of the ninth to beat Brooklyn.
Wow.
Oh boy.
But you know, that's just like it. You know, in my time, at least me, I didn't pay any attention to all these records and so forth. I didn't even pay any attention to Major League Baseball. I had to make a living back then, and playing baseball was making a living. But I didn't know. As I said, I never met an agent in my life. The general managers would scare you to death. My first year in the major leagues, I had 16 home runs, drove in 70 runs or 68 runs, stole 16 bases, led the league in putouts and assists, and the general manager sent me the contract, and it was a $2,000 raise. And so I sent it back to him and said, I've seen in the paper where 2 or 3 teams would like to get me, trade for me. And he wrote me back, and he said there was only one team that wanted you to trade. And they offered a broken bat and a caved-in catcher's mask and an old dirty ball. He said, you better get your rear end out to Catalina Island and try to make the team. And I signed that contract so fast and sent it back. It scared me to death. Nowadays, I figured this out a few years ago. You can take my 10-year salary, and the most I ever made in the major leagues was $21,000.
How do you like that?
If you add up my 10-year salary and put it over as a figure on the left-hand side,
average,
and you go over and you take some of these big timers, or a lot of them, but you just take their salary and you pull out one game, and they will make more in one game than I made.
One game than you did. Unbelievable. That's crazy. It is crazy.
Well, it's crazy, but I'm very envious. But
right.
That
was right.
Yeah, I made my check for World Series was $6,000.
That was a lot of money in those days, wasn't it?
Oh my gosh! Ooh.
Yeah.
I had a business that I had with my dad in Oklahoma, and we had to turn it in because it just wasn't working out. And so I had to take my $6,000 check and endorse it over to the IRS. So I never got to spend a penny.
Oh no!
Oh, that's terrible.
Well, you win some, you lose some. That's the way you look at it.
That's right. That's right.
But it was a great.
Ransom, I want to ask you. I want to ask you another question, Ransom. I'm dying to ask you this question.
All right.
I've been thinking about it all day long. Tell us the story, if you would be so kind, of the Mafia guy.
Okay. Yeah, this was fun. It was my third year, I guess, with the Cubs. In spring training, first year they sent me to Des Moines, then they sent me to Oklahoma City, and then this time they sent me to Springfield. Each year, going up A, AA, AAA, just to learn how to play the game. And so they sent me to Springfield, Massachusetts, which was a Chicago franchise at the time. And so I spent spring training with the Cubs, and then after spring training they sent me up there. And so I got up there, and we were playing a couple of games at night. And of course, I immediately became the third baseman. And so I noticed that there was a guy. The people up there in New England were great people, but they didn't care about. They didn't stay after the game to talk or anything. The game was over. They got in the car and drove home. But there's one guy that had a big nose. He would stay afterwards and talk to some of the guys. So I asked the guy one day, I said, who is that guy? He said, well, that's Big Nose Sam Kafari. And I said, what does that do for me? He said, well, he's the head of the Mafia here in Springfield. And I said, oh, well, I've just never been associated. So Sam came over. I went over to Sam, and we talked. It just turned out to be a great guy. And he said, well, a couple times, would you like to go out and play golf? Well, I love golf. He said, well, I'll have somebody pick you up at 8 o'clock in the morning. So this long black Cadillac would pull up, and this guy with a broken nose would get out and come up, knock on the door, and we'd get in the car and go out to the golf course. And we'd play 18 holes, and we'd come in, and the clubhouse would be empty. Where you dress, locker room would be empty, and there'd be a long table full of Italian foods and everything, and it'd just be for us, and we'd sit down and eat. And so we did this 2 or 3 times. He had a restaurant downtown. I'd go down there and eat sometimes. He'd invite me, and I didn't go downstairs. I'd heard that downstairs was where they have some tables and so forth, so I wasn't fixed to go down there. So anyway, Sam was just a great guy. He never asked me for anything, and just he loved baseball. He was talking all day long, and and would take me out to the golf course. And so about let's see, that's 58. No, 48. Anyway, it was my last year in the minor leagues. And so I'd been up to major leagues a couple of years, and we got into New York, and we were playing 3 doubleheaders in a row in really hot weather. And we played 2 doubleheaders, and I was back in the room just beat because the temperature was around 100. And the telephone rang about 9:30, and I answered, and I was kind of lying on the bed. And he said, Randy, and I said, yes. Sam Kafari. I said, Sam, how you doing, buddy? And he said, just in town, on business, and I thought I'd call and say hello. I said, well, it's great to talk to you. He said, why don't you come on down to, I'm having supper here at the restaurant. I said, Sam, I got another doubleheader tomorrow, just finished 2 doubleheaders. He says, come on down. I said, I'll be there in 15 minutes. So it was only about 3 blocks away, so it didn't take long. So I walked in, and the maitre d' met me at the door, and I said, I'm looking for Mr. Kafari. He said, oh, yeah, he's in the back. So I went in the back, and there was a long table, about 5 guys on each side. And at the head of the table, way in the back, was Sam sitting there. And he got up and waved his hand and said, Randy, come on back. So I walked down there and passed these guys. Every one of them had M-A-L-I across their forehead, I could tell. And so I sat down with him, and we talked baseball for half an hour. And he had something in front of me. He says, you want a bite? And I said, what is it, Sam? And he says, it's, what is that? It's octopus. And I said, I don't believe I want a bite, Sam. He says, have a bite. And I said, okay. So I ate a bite, and it tasted like Goodyear rubber. And he said, you want any more? And I said, no, thank you. And so we talked some more, and I headed back. I said, thank you. I enjoyed it. So I really did enjoy talking to him. And so I went on back to the hotel, and, over the years after that, I'd occasionally hear about him. He'd be in the paper. Uncle Sam was after him, caught him, put him to prison. But you can Google him now, and he's there. So
yeah, wow.
And the funny thing is, I always tell that story because I think I'm big time, and I'm about the only guy in the world who knows a mafia guy. And so I was making a speech at Barnes and Noble. Had about 50 people there. And, I was being big time, and I asked the question. After I told the story, I asked the question. I said, I feel like I'm about the only one in Athens, Georgia, who had a friend who was in the mafia. And I said, I'm sure none of you have. And 2 people raised their hand. I felt like, yuck. I'll never ask that question again because they really embarrassed me. But that's the story of the guy with the big nose, and I would say there's not that many people who were friends with a mafia boss, but it's a great story.
That is a great story. That's terrific. That's fabulous. I love it.
How did you get along with Walter Alston?
Man, you talk about a good guy. he was about, if you had to write down what you want, as a major league manager, who, for his personality or whatever, he would be it. He'd fit everything. He was just a nice, quiet guy, never raised his voice. I remember one day there were two guys arguing. I don't remember who they were. And he walked over and got between them and picked both of them, one in each arm. His arm
he was strong.
My leg. And he said, "We're not going to have any more of this." He set him back down and he walked off. And you're right. They eased off. They didn't say anything else to each other. But he was just a great guy, a great manager, and it was just it was an honor to be on his team.
Wow,
you're a great guy. I'll tell you. This is fabulous.
Yeah, these stories are fantastic. Before I let you go, Ransom, and I want to remind our listeners that I'm talking with Handsome Ransom Jackson, third baseman for the Brooklyn Dodgers, and Handsome Ransom Jackson, Accidental Big Leaguer, is this book. You can get it on Amazon. You can get them in Barnes & Noble, anywhere where books are sold. Handsome Ransom Jackson.
One thing I wanted to tell you, I don't know whether you knew this, as far as the Brooklyn Dodgers, I think I'm the sixth oldest living Brooklyn Dodger.
Really?
I mean, there's a couple of guys that were only up there for a month, but that counts. But I think I'm the sixth oldest, and as far as I played with the Cubs for 5.5 years. I'm the third oldest, I believe, Chicago Cub, and then I played with one year for L.A. And I think I'm either the first or the second oldest Los Angeles Dodger. And then for Cleveland, I think I'm about the fifth oldest. I played 1 year.
How old are you, Randy? How old are you?
I just turned 91.
God bless you. That's fabulous.
Thank you. Thank you.
Terrific. You sound great. You sound like you sound like you're in the late 60s. Not 91.
Well, I appreciate that. Where do I send the check?
Yeah, right.
Before I let you go, Ransom, I would be remiss if I didn't ask you one more thing. Could you shed a little light? How was it moving from Brooklyn out to Hollywood to play games? And is it true that you used to look for the movie stars while you sat in the dugout?
Well, see, I didn't know anything about the move until, I guess, November of the next year.
Yeah.
Some of the guys, I guess, had heard rumors, but I didn't know anything about it until I saw it in the paper, and so, I'd played in L.A. before, so I was familiar there. I played a month with L.A. in the Cubs system, so I was kind of familiar with what was going on, but to get out there and you find you're playing in a football field, my gosh. I mean,
right.
They had a left field. They put a screen in left field. You couldn't get a 9-iron over that thing.
Wally Moon used to hit a few about it there, didn't he?
Yeah. Wally Moon hit a lot of them out. But it was weird, and so it was not interesting. The games were not interesting because it is a weird field. The lighting wasn't that good. So we were in a different place. And you had all these movie stars that would come out to the game. Yeah. And so it was much more fun to sit on the steps and look up at the stands and say, look at there. Oh, there's so-and-so. Oh, yeah. Yay. And somebody say, what's the score? And we'll say, damn if I know. So, I mean, that was the most fun, looking up in the stand. And then in the daytime, if we had night games, we could go out to the beach. So, it was a little bit different. Played in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
But,
did you ever play at Dodger Stadium?
No.
No. Okay.
It did a couple of years after I quit.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
But I mean,
you ever get out
there. The Dodgers were great. The Dodgers had invited me out there 4 different times to come out to California, so they were great people. So
they're great people. They really are.
They really are. They do anything for you, and to invite you to fly you out there to some of these things, which is fantastic to see some of the guys again. And
sure.
All right, I really enjoyed talking to you guys. You brought back some memories.
Wow.
Well, I'm glad that I told you about those 2 home run games that you hit 2 home runs in a game 6 times and you had 4 hits 10 times. I'm glad you wrote that down, and you can use that in your next speech or your next interview. I want to thank you once again for being our guest tonight, and I want to remind the fans, Handsome Ransom Jackson, Accidental Big Leaguer. It's in all bookstores now, and it's also on, you can get it online on Amazon.com. Thank you, Ransom Jackson, for being the gentleman that you are, and I hope to have you back again.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and you have my phone number.
I sure do.
I believe
Randy.
my partner does.
So
yes, Ron does.
I do.
Ron
yes,
does.
I do.
Okay, great.
Randy, thank you so much. It was great.
Thank you all for calling. It made my night.
Okay. Take
Thank
care.
you very much.
Bye-bye.
Right,
Good night.
you.
Bye now.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.